Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So what I'd like to do is show you how to graph the system of two linear inequalities. And to go ahead and do that, what we first want to do is we want to graph these two inequalities. And the easiest way, I think, when graphing inequalities when we only have one variable is to use a table of values. Well, first I'm going to kind of create our coordinate axis, where we have here the y-axis, and then we have here is the x-axis. All right, so I'm going to graph these kind of or I'm going to create my table of values separately for both of these inequalities. Now, you can see that when we're dealing with one variable, when I create my table of values, we know already the value of one of the variables. Now, let's kind of forget about right now that we're dealing with inequalities, and let's just graph what the equation would look like. And not really graph the equation, but let's use a table of values to determine what the equation would look like. So in this case, I know that x is always equal to 3. So therefore, I'm simply just going to create a table of values. What am I doing? That's a y. So where x is always equal to 3. Then for the values of y, I'm going to choose arbitrary values, -2, 0, 2, and 3. It doesn't really matter what values we want to pick. For over here, I see that my value of y is always equal to -4. So now I'm just going to plug in -4 in for y, and I'm going to choose arbitrary values in for x. So -3, 0, 1, 3. And again, it doesn't really matter, but it's a way for us to get an idea of what exactly these graphs are going to look like. So to graph this, I'm simply going to plot the points because, again, we're not graphing the equation. We need to graph the inequality. And it is going to depend on, sometimes our graphs are going to be dashed or solid, which we'll get into in a second. So by graphing this, I notice that my x value is always equal to 3. 1, 2, 3. It doesn't matter if it's 3, 0, 3, 2, or 3, -2. I can keep on plotting these points or many other points, but what you guys can see is if I connect these points, it's going to create a vertical line. Now I go into my inequality, and I just look at the inequality symbol. Forget about if it's less than or greater than. But the main important thing to understand is it's not equal to, right? It doesn't have the bottom liner there. So since it's less than, I know that this graph is going to, since it's less than and not less than or equal to, this boundary line is not going to be a part of the solution. So to represent that, I'm going to use a dashed line. Now the next thing we're going to look at is graphing y is greater than or equal to -4. And here you see that y is always equal to -4 when graphing the y equals -4. So I'm going to go down to -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And look at my arbitrary values, 0, -4. I could go over 1, -4. I could go -3, -4. But y is always going to be -4. So therefore, my boundary line is going to be a horizontal line. But in this case, it's greater than or equal to, not just greater than. So since that equal to tells us our boundary line is going to be a part of the solution, so therefore we graph it as a solid line. Now lastly, we need to go ahead and determine the shading. Are the points that are going to be above or below true, or to the left or to the right of that boundary line true? So to do that, we need to choose a test point. And the best test point to choose, as long as your graphs do not go through that, is 0, 0. Now, notice that the test point is a coordinate point, 0, x, y. Well, we don't have an x, y to plug in, so we're just going to plug in the coordinate of 0, 0 in for each inequality that we have. So in this case, I write 0 is less than 3. In this case, I write 0 is greater than or equal to -4. Now, let's go ahead and test the coordinates. 0 is less than 3. That is true. That means on this boundary line, this test point is true. Therefore, I am going to be shading to the left. And when I'm graphing inequalities, I like to go and use arrows before I shade in my final result. For this boundary line, 0 is greater than or equal to -4. That is also true. So therefore, I'm going to shade above the line. Now, when shading our inequality, we're only going to shade where it's going to be true for both of our inequalities, which will be the region right here. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is how you graph a system of two linear inequalities. Thanks.